The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is... This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Anthony Scaramucci, the investment fund manager, cryptocurrency enthusiast, author, and former White House communications director. You are the founder and managing partner of the global investment firm Skybridge Capital, and you chair the SALT Conference, which has hosted Presidents George W. Bush, Sir Richard Branson, and Mike Tyson. You've been ranked in the top 100 most powerful people in global finance, and Ernst & Young previously named you Entrepreneur of the Year. You've recently been embroiled in the fallout of the FTX collapse, and your relationship with Sam Bankman-Fried has become the focus of a great deal of attention. You believe that recent events prove crypto needs regulation, but that this technology is here to stay and will play a major part of our future. Anthony, welcome back to London Real.
Been a tough year, Brian. Tough year, but it's always a pleasure. It's always great to be with you, of course. You have an amazing show. And, but yeah, it's been a tough year. I know Sam well, obviously disappointed by Sam. And I think what Sam perpetrated is absolutely tragic. So, you know, there's some mental health issues there going on as well. I would encourage your viewers and listeners to read his testimony that he was supposed to give to the Congress, which he did not give because he was arrested. But you could see that is a young man struggling with a lot of mental health issues. So, he lost me money. He hurt my reputation, but I still am a human being. And so when I read that, I read it with great sadness, not only for him, but also for his mom and dad, who I got to know well. You know, it's just one of these things where it's a head scratcher for me. I always tell my clients and my friends, it's not the things that you worry about, the things that, okay, that's a risk. I have to worry about this. It's the things that you think you know with reasonable degrees of certainty that catch you blind. Those are the things that hit you. And this really did hit me out of the blue.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your candor, and you're always candid. That's what I really appreciate you about you, Scaramucci. When you were here in London that first time, you talked about everything that happened in the White House, and I know you're going to do it today, and I appreciate it. And I agree. I think we could all use a little bit of compassion here. I mean, the kid's 30. He went to MIT just like I did. He obviously made a lot of decisions, disappointed a lot of people. But at the end of the day, he is human, and he's dealing with a situation that nobody would want to be in right now. And I think sometimes Twitter can just go for the throat. And I appreciate you saying that to start off.
Yeah, listen, I mean, you know, I got hammered by the guy. You know, remember, I got introduced to him by a mutual friend. He asked to support and sponsor my SALT conference. I did do that with him. I was back in 2021. It went very well. We ended up doing a conference together in the Bahamas, which was very well received. It was arguably one of the best cryptocurrency conferences in the industry's short history. You know, 2,500 people at the Baha Mar Hotel. We brought President Clinton, Prime Minister Blair. We had a host of celebrities there, but also, I would say, the broad base of the crypto ecosystem. When the bottom fell out of the crypto market shortly thereafter, Sam had positioned himself as somebody that was well risk managed, and he was in the process of buying up other companies. Okay, so you just have to imagine the impression that we all had of him, which was 180 degrees away from what he was actually really doing. And then you say, so, well, how could you not know? Because here's what happens now, Brian. People will blame the victims. You know, I went to the Yale School of Management Symposium this week. There were probably 75 CEOs from the top U.S. Fortune 250. There were luminaries and academics, and several of my old bosses, including Lloyd Blankfein, were there. Jeff Sonnenfeld, the dean of the school, he juxtaposed a deal announcement on CNBC of me discussing the purchase of Sam, buying my shares, the 30% interest, and then 2.5 months later, me on CNBC speaking about what appeared to be fraud. We know more about it now, so we can say it more definitively. And then he turns to me and says, what say you? And here I am in front of all those people on the hot seat. And I'm going to tell you what I said to them, because I think it's important for your viewers and listeners. I said, well, number one, I obviously made a mistake. And so what you do when you make a mistake is you own the mistake and you explain what happened. Particularly in a situation where there's fraud, because I would rather explain it to everybody so that if just one person does not have to go through what Skybridge and I myself are going through right now, if we could save one person from learning about what was perpetrated, I think that's a victory. Number two, I'm a risk taker. I don't grow up in a blue collar neighborhood and live the life that I've lived. And yes, it was a short stay in the White House, but I did have an office in the White House. I did fly Air Force One. I built 2 successful businesses. I've authored several books. You've seen me on a few reality shows. I'm coming up on Special Forces this January. Your UK guys will know Billy Billingham and Foxy, Jason Fox, who were kicking my butt in the Jordanian desert this past summer. You're not going to live that kind of a life experience without taking risk. And so my message to the entrepreneurs and the young aspirants that are listening to London Real, when you have a high profile like mine and you fail, it gets 4 to 5 times more exaggerated because of the spotlight, and everybody likes a good car crash. But I could not get to where I am without throwing the football. So when you throw the football, you get sacked, you fumble the football, and you have interceptions. But man, you can score a lot of touchdowns too. And the last point I'll make on this topic, and I'm happy to talk about anything as detailed as you would like, is this is not going to deter me from taking risk in the future. This is not going to deter me from explaining to people what the blockchain is and what the innovations are of that technology and why we think that technology is here to stay. It's not going to stop me from debating naysayers. And I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to be on.
Well, let's go through the timeline, because I think it can tell us a lot, and also fill in a little bit of a backstory that I wasn't aware. Obviously, I saw you do the Bahamas conference with Salt, and I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. And then I think it was September, it was announced that Sam was buying 30% of Skybridge, which again surprised me. And then I know you went on a trip to kind of the Middle East to start introducing him to people. Can you talk me through some of those events and how and why they happened? And again, at the same time, you're hanging out and spending a lot of time with 30-year-old Sam, and I'm just wondering what your impressions were then.
So I'm not somebody to revise history. I liked Sam. I thought he was a brilliant young man, and I thought that he was onto something that was going to change the exchange business. We have 2 real everything exchanges in the United States: the New York Stock Exchange, and then we have the CME. The New York Stock Exchange created in the 1700s, the CME created in the 1800s. Sam was developing a 21st century stock exchange. He was starting, or global everything exchange. He was starting with crypto, but he was going to migrate himself into stocks and bonds and eventually tokenized private equity and real estate and et cetera. And it was a very, very compelling story. He also had 12.5% of the cryptocurrency markets. I sat on his trading desk in the Bahamas. I saw the volume coming in through the computer systems. I saw the spreads that they were making in the cryptocurrency markets. He had 12.5% of all of the cryptocurrency market. So he was the second largest exchange. So I want everybody to understand the magnitude of this. So I thought he was an absolutely brilliant young man. His dad was a tax professor, mom a compliance professor. He was preaching compliance and a strict adherence to compliance. He had said before the Congress that he was 1-to-1 and that assets were not commingled. There was no evidence in his data room when we did our due diligence that any assets were commingled. He had audited financials. Of course, he created an accounting backdoor that allowed him to do that. What I will tell your listeners is that if you want to create fraud, you can create fraud. Okay, there's no question about it. You can be Bernie Madoff in the most regulated industry in the world, create fraud. You can be Theranos, food and drugs, most regulated industry in the world, right? Securities and food and drugs. You can create fraud. Those are regulated industries where fraud was created. This was partially regulated, mostly unregulated, and he perpetrated this fraud. Now, the good news for US-based accounts on the regulation side, because the US is so strictly adherent to regulations, I believe those accounts will probably be made whole once the bankruptcy is resolved. It may take 2 years, but it seemed like the American side of his business was being run appropriately, as far as we can tell. But you're asking about my interactions with him. Every time I met with him or interacted with him, I came away thinking, wow, I think Sam is smart, but he may be perhaps smarter than I originally thought he was. He knew a lot about a lot of different subjects. He was a student of American politics, American sports. He had a very good understanding of trading, the algorithms and processes involved in successful arbitrage trading. And so there's no doubt that this was a very, very smart young man. Obviously, I didn't see the troubles that he had. He was somewhat peculiar. He doesn't have your EQ, for example, or perhaps my EQ, but neither does Mark Zuckerberg. And so when I looked at him, my old boss, Lloyd Blankfein, said to me, after I made my remarks at the Yale event, he said, yeah, people are going to pick on you now. They're going to demonize the victims of his fraud. They're going to make it look like you guys were stupid. But let's face it, he looked like Bill Gates in 1971. I laughed. I said, wow, you're really dating yourself, because I thought he was the Mark Zuckerberg of crypto. I didn't think he was the Bernie Madoff of crypto. But since you're bringing up that Middle East trip, which was quite faithful, I took him with me to the Middle East. We visited Riyadh. We visited Abu Dhabi and Dubai. He met with senior leadership there, both political leadership and business leaders. I think they were impressed with him. I think many people were about to embark upon due diligence to raise another tranche of capital for FTX. And FTX, notwithstanding what happened with Alameda, Brian, I'll maintain to this day a clean run FTX is a profitable business. Now, maybe he was exaggerating profits. I'm not saying that he wasn't, but he had a exchange and a franchise where lots of trades were going on. And so maybe it would have been modestly profitable or less profitable than we all thought, but it seemed very profitable. An honest person could have made a very, very good living off of that business. And so there's tragedy there too, because I can tell you, when it became clear that there was a huge problem there, once him and CZ started fighting. And again, this sounds weird to be grateful for this, but I'm actually grateful for CZ, because when we were in the Middle East, I wasn't in these meetings, but through hearsay, I heard this. Sam was lambasting and denigrating CZ. That got back to CZ. You know, the Middle East is a small community. London's a small community, so is New York. And CZ said, okay, you're lambasting me to regulators and business colleagues here where I live. I'm going to sell the remainder of my tokens that you gave me upon the sale of my interest in your company. And CZ helped him start that company.
Right. And the lambasting was, from what I understand, and Kevin O'Leary has said this, he was saying that CZ was preventing him from getting regulation because he wouldn't sign off for something because he was a 20% equity holder? Was it something like that, or maybe other stuff?
Yeah, listen, I think Kevin's getting that information from Sam. I don't know what is true or isn't true. I have a different take on CZ than Kevin. Kevin and I are close personal friends. We can agree to disagree on certain things. I like CZ. I think CZ is very competent. I think I would like to see CZ succeed. I hope the assets are shored up. And the reserves are there for Binance. I believe that they are, but obviously I don't know. I think you have to call into question everything now. Yeah. You have these presumptions about people being good, and sometimes you may have to have a different presumption if you're operating in a wild frontier. But I like CZ. I don't want CZ to fail. In fact, I would say CZ's failure would be another big blow to the industry, and I would prefer to see CZ thrive as opposed to fail. Kevin's issue is that money was given to CZ, which depleted the balance sheet of FTX.
Yeah, and that's what he
But-
said in front of the
but-
Senate hearing. Yeah.
But I can tell you that money was given a year or two ago. And I can tell you that he got an exchange of what appeared at that time to be fair value for it. So I don't think it's going to get clawed back. That's my opinion of it. Kevin has a different opinion of it. We'll have to see what happens. But the notion that CZ put FTX and Sam out of business is an incorrect notion. He could have pulled the pin and collapsed the house of cards. But if that card system was sturdy and there was one-to-one accounting and there was no violation of the terms of service, or there was no perjury by Sam telling people in the Congress that he was one-to-one and that he would never invade or commingle client accounts, then what CZ did, the company would have never failed. He would have bid on those FTT tokens, sold those FTT tokens. It could have impaired Sam's balance sheet, but it wouldn't have knocked him out of business. And so weirdly, I'm grateful to CZ that he exposed what happened. I'm grateful for that because it prevented friends, colleagues, and clients of mine from believing Sam's story and making additional investments in FTX, which would have obviously gone to zero. So I would rather have this thing happen now than in 2023 or 2024, where Sam had raised more money and created a more colossal, mountainous house of cards than the one that just collapsed. But so for me, when I found out that there was a problem, rather than sitting around, I flew to the Bahamas. I got on a plane, took a 6:50 a.m. JetBlue flight to the Bahamas, got in a car, headed for their office. And then from their office, I went over to Albany where they were living. And I had the opportunity to meet with Sam, meet with his dad. I had an opportunity to spend some time with his compliance people. And then it became very, very, very clear to me that something really bad had happened, that they had moved money inappropriately from client accounts into Sam's personal account. Now, I'm going to let the court system adjudicate that. I'm going to let the courts and the enforcement agents and the justice system figure that out for Sam. And I do agree with this related to what Kevin O'Leary is saying. We are all innocent until proven guilty or until we plead guilty. And so I love that about the West. I love that about Great Britain, the United Kingdom. I love that about the United States. I think it's very, very important that we maintain that standard. I don't want to be the judge, the trial, and the jury like Twitter is or other facets of social media. I want to let that process play itself out. You asked me a point blank question. Did Sam commit a fraud? My answer to that question, based on all available information and direct knowledge and evidence, not hearsay, I believe that he did. Okay, but I'm going to let the court figure that out and let the court decide that. But if you're asking me that direct question, yes, he did something that was terribly inappropriate, and he cost people a lot of money. He cost people their jobs. He hurt people. And I will say this to you because you'll get this because you're an old school guy. And I think people listen to you because you have old school values and you're a principled guy. You show up in a suit and tie every day, okay? And I know your tailors, by the way, and they do a great job, okay? And you look great. And I apologize that I'm not in a suit and tie today because I'm home and I just had shoulder surgery. But I show up in a suit and tie every day because I'm an old school person and I grew up, on Wall Street, and I knew I had to dress a certain way, mostly out of respect for my clients and mostly out of respect for the people in my organization. And so Sam showed up in a t-shirt and shorts, and he showed up in white socks. And okay, if you're a genius, and when Mark Zuckerberg hit the scene and he was in a hoodie and he rang the bell on the exchange in a hoodie, we all looked at him and said, okay, he's the genius, we're not. He's the statistical outlier. We're not. God bless him. Praise his success and hope he continues to grow his business and create jobs. But if you're a fraud and you're showing up like that and you're meeting clients of mine and you ask me for help and you buy 30% of my business, and now I'm taking you around the world and I'm introducing you to people that I have 3-decade plus relationships with, and you're showing up in shorts and a t-shirt, but you're actually taking clients' money while you're doing that. That's a super disrespectful thing. Okay. And I'm sore about that. Okay. I am very sore about that. Who the hell do you think you are that I've worked on Wall Street for 35 years? I have no blemishes on my ADV Part 1. I have no U4 violations. My ADV Part 2 is clean. I run things very strict from a compliance-centric point of view. Who the hell do you think you are to trample on me and the people around me to do something like that? So I'm upset about it. I'm not going to pretend otherwise.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.